Welcome for today's January speed learning session, How to Lead a Successful Nonprofit Tech Change. So my name is Yulia Zhernovaya. I'm a head of growth at Giveffect. For those who might not be as familiar, Giveffect is 10-in-1 nonprofit platform with all the tools, you know, giving, donor management, volunteer management, brand, CRM, marketing, you name it, all the tools to help your nonprofit to operate smoothly, achieve operational efficiency, financial stability, and further your mission. And today, I am so excited to welcome our speaker, Devon Meier, Director of Philanthropy at Rose Hill Foundation. Devon, I'm going to pass it to you just to share
Okay,
just a little bit more about yourself
sure.
and the organization.
Great to have you all on the call today. Thank you so much for joining. And Oklahoma has said you're on day three of three kids without
Oh my
out of
gosh.
school. You got this. It's gonna be okay. So like Lee said, I'm Devon, and I have been working in the world of philanthropy since 2008. Actually got my start with St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, managing field offices. So throughout my career, I've worked predominantly in human services, whether it's helping kids who are sick, to folks who need affordable housing, to seniors who are looking to have the best last chapter of their lives, and all through philanthropy. And now I have the privilege, I've been with Rose Hill Foundation for about a year and a half, and I have the privilege to work for a mission that helps adults who struggle with significant and persistent mental illness up here on 400 acres in Holly, Michigan. We're a therapeutic farming community where we work on all the types of different treatment for major mental illness like schizophrenia, schizoaffective, bipolar, and we specialize in autism spectrum disorder and thought disorders. And then part of our treatment plan is we have work teams. So folks can help take care of, we have 100 animals up here on the farm, and we have horticulture and housekeeping and kitchen. Just really an incredible mission. If you're ever in Holly, come on by. We'd love to give tours, but this is a place where miracles happen every day, from a small one to a major one. Oh, and
Thank
I
you
should
so much
say,
for sharing.
yeah, I should say I've
Go ahead.
had the privilege of transitioning three databases in my career. So I kind of love this stuff. So happy to connect with you after as well.
Well, that's exactly why we're so excited about this conversation today. And thank you so much about sharing a little bit more about yourself and your organization. I mean, you guys are doing absolutely amazing work. So
Mhm.
thank you for all you do every day.
Thank you.
Before we jump in, a couple of housekeeping items for everyone. So this is what we call speed learning session. Typically, it's 30 minutes. It goes by so quickly. We're gonna typically have 20 minutes interview and then live Q&A, but this time around we actually received so many questions on the registration form, so thank you everyone who submitted the questions. So David agreed to stay a little bit longer, and we want to go through as many questions as we want. So the session actually is extended to 45 minutes. If you can stay with us for that portion, please do so. If you need to hop off, at 11:30 a.m., we totally understand. That's fine. And the session is recorded, and our team will be sharing the recording with everyone by the end of this week. So, in case you're not going to be there live, you're definitely going to get it in your inbox. Either way, again, let's get started. All right.
Okay.
So, Devin, first of all, want to start from the beginning, right? No, you've transitioned. I know you've been through many transitions, and we'll talk about them as we go.
Sure.
But your latest transition
Yeah.
happened about a year ago, right? So
Yes.
congratulations on it's
Thank
been
you.
a year.
Yeah.
But I wanted to start with like the beginning. What was happening? You mentioned you've been with Rose Hill Foundation for a year and a half. So I'm curious, like, what was happening within the organization that prompted you to start the wedding research and
Sure.
further led to change?
Yeah, sure. So I started with Rose Hill in August of 2024. And when I came on board, the organization, so we have two entities. We have the center, which does all of the treatment and care, and we have the foundation that raises the funds to support the center. And at the time, prior to my arrival, the center and the foundation were both fundraising, which, as you can
Mm-hmm.
imagine, led to some donor confusion and how is this being tracked and are you keeping everything together, right? And they brought in a consulting team before I arrived who really took a look at the program and made the recommendation that really all of the fundraising initiatives needed to transfer to the foundation. And so that decision was made, which was great, fully support. So when I came in, it was time to really look at all pieces of the program. How are we going to take the foundation from where it is today to the next level? And that was a really big part of my interview process too, is how are we going to
Mm-hmm.
do that? This organization has been around since 1992. The foundation was started in 2003. We were
Yeah.
hovering around anywhere from 400 to 500 donors, and
Mm-hmm.
raising it really kind of fluctuated up and down, sort of an ebb and flow of some years it was 700,000, some years it was 2 million, depending on legacy gifts. And so when I started, they had not had a director of philanthropy for about a year. And when
Mm-hmm.
prior to that, the former director and team with the database coordinator had started looking at choosing another database. The database they had sort of hit its shelf life, if you will. It was
Mm-hmm.
not, it was a database company that had been acquired by a bigger one. And the plan was to sunset the database they were working
I
with.
see.
And so they started looking at other options, but then the bigger company decided to keep it. But it was a very small group of people who were still using it.
Mm-hmm.
So the support for it was extremely limited and just the
Mm-hmm.
functionality was very basic, is what I'll say.
Mm-hmm.
And it was pretty clear within a couple of months, knowing the plans we were going to have for 2025, that we needed a much more robust system that
Mm-hmm.
could offer us a wide variety of programs.
I see. So tell us a little bit more. How did you approach this research and vetting like this time around? I actually did we actually did a little bit of research recently and
Hmm.
looked at about 40 nonprofits who like recently transitioned to Giveffect. And I was
Yeah.
so surprised to see how big is the gap within the organization. Like how long does it take to make a decision? The
Hmm.
organization who make decision fast, it's a lot of time, it's like 8 to 12 weeks. There is a lot of
Hmm.
those, but there is also
Yep.
on the other spectrum, we have some organizations who took up to 2 years and a half with a lot of
Sure.
stops and starts before they
Hmm.
got there.
Right.
So curious to hear from your end, like how long did it take and how did you approach it so you reach the decision without feeling overwhelmed by the process?
Mhm. Yep. So within about a month and a half, I observed for a while and I learned the database. I'm our development
Mm-hmm.
coordinator. She was really great at showing me. She had been with the organization 10 years. This is the platform she knew,
Uh,
with its pros and its cons. And she showed me what some of the challenges were. And then in terms of trying to get reporting out, it became really difficult.
mm-hmm.
And I thought, okay, we've got to make a change. And since I knew that in 23 they had started to look, I knew it was not a new concept to the organization, but it was
Mm-hmm.
going to be a let's relook at this. And we had a new CEO. So it was an opportunity to like, okay, we've got fresh eyes in here. Let's if we're going to make
Mm-hmm.
a change, let's make a change before we go into budget cycle because I'm on a calendar year fiscal year. And I knew
Mm-hmm.
that I
Okay.
wanted to make the decision by the time I hit the new fiscal year because I needed to get ready for what was coming. So the development coordinator and I really sat down and we put together a list, right? What are the
Mm-hmm.
must-haves? Like, what do we absolutely need
Mm-hmm.
for a database? What things are we not willing to compromise on? That was first and foremost. And then really started just looking at different companies, because
Mm-hmm.
I've been in a few different arenas and I've
Mm-hmm.
transitioned to other databases, I knew some of the companies that I thought, you know what, worth another look, or you know what, they're just not going to fit based on what I know we
Mm-hmm.
need. And the first thing I should tell you is, as we were going to move into 2025, we were going to host our first ever 5K. And I come from, remember the St. Jude world, I come from every kind of grassroots thing you can think of, and walks and 5Ks were one of them. And I knew in order to get people to come to Holly and come to our campus, we had to
Mm-hmm.
bring something here. And this was a way to energize potentially a new donor base, and create this
Mm-hmm.
peer to peer. And so that for me was an absolute must because we were not going to do this
Mm-hmm.
on paper.
Yep.
So we made that list and then we chose 4 or 5 different companies
Mm-hmm.
to meet with and demo. And we, kept a spreadsheet, a chart going so we could do apples to apples. This is what they're offering. These are the
Mm-hmm.
things that we want. Do they have them? Do they
Nice.
not? Are there workarounds? A lot of times database companies will have your core thing you need, but then you need to
Mm-hmm.
contract out with a third party. And I had done that
Right.
already with an organization. And I just knew that there had to be something where I could do this all in one place.
Mm-hmm. I see. You also mentioned that you've done other transitions, right, in your career. So
Yes.
I was curious, is anything you've changed this time around or you did differently that helped you?
Yeah. So the last transition I did, one of the biggest lessons learned was we were getting right to the point where we were about to choose the database we were going to go with.
Mm-hmm.
And the fundraising team was really excited. I can say it was really excited about Giveffect.
Mm-hmm.
And it had all the modules we wanted to go. But the previous database we were using had a financial component tied to it that our accounting
Mm-hmm.
teams were using. And we
Mm-hmm.
were like down to, okay, it's time to make the decision. We're making the push. We're giving the reasons why we should go with this other company. And accounting came in and said, can you kind of rethink this? This is like, we're so used to this. And I worked in an
Mm-hmm.
organization that had 30 different properties and it was a small accounting team. And I knew
Mm-hmm.
what the workload was going to be put onto them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so while we loved this new system, ultimately needed to just upgrade with our current
Mm-hmm.
system that was literally, I mean, I say this with all love and respect, close to an Access database because it was like the original and it was moving to the cloud and
Mm-hmm.
online, which was good for us and also had the accounting piece. So this
Right.
time around, when we started looking, I started asking, what's the accounting platform? Is there a need to have
Mm-hmm.
it be like tied together? And the way our accounting works is it's third party. They're using their own system, so it didn't need to be
Mm-hmm.
connected to them,
Integrated. Mm-hmm.
integrated, right? We had a system already in place for reporting back and forth with them. So that's a big thing is that all stakeholders are in the know.
That's such a great point, and I think
Mhm.
that's where a lot of stops and starts
Right.
happening as the
Sure.
organization goes. So
Yeah.
getting that clear right from the beginning, what
Yeah.
it also kind of goes to your must-have list then, right? If you know
Yeah.
that it's part of the requirements.
That's right.
So you mentioned finance team involvement. Was there any, you also mentioned you have development managers. So I'm curious, were there anyone else in the team that you involved in the process like this time around?
Yeah. So once we got down to probably the final 2, I involved the CEO, right? Because now I'm going
Mm,
to have a budget conversation. And
here we go.
I had prepped before we went on this journey that I was pretty confident it was going to increase our
Mm,
cost. I mean, this was a platform we'd been on for years and years. It was a very low cost, but I've had
mm,
people in my life say to me before, you get what you pay for. And that is very true.
mhm,
So once we got down to that too, I sat down with him and kind of went through, these are all the offerings. Here's what it's going to
mm,
cost. Here's what we can get with it. Here's my recommendation. And
mhm,
you don't, a thing I've learned over the years is I'm not going necessarily with the least cost because I ultimately need
Mm-hmm.
something that's going to set us up long term because eventually it will pay for itself. And I've had to learn that along the way, right? Because I'm super cost conscious
Mm-hmm.
with donor dollars,
Of
but I
course.
just knew um, the route we needed to go. And I had to get buy-in from the development coordinator as well. I mean, let's
Mm-hmm.
be honest, you're with a system for a long time, change is hard,
Mm-hmm.
right? You know that system, even if it's not working, you know it.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're
Yeah.
going to make this big change. And what does that look like? And I have to relearn things. And so I was really spending time of we're in this together because the
Mm-hmm.
ultimate goal is to make this easier, right? So that we can focus on what we're supposed to do, which is raise some money. And, part of those, I mentioned the must-haves, right? Those must-haves for us were user-friendly, right? I needed to think
Mm-hmm.
about, I always want to think about the front end fundraiser. Who's got to go in and write notes and make a contact and do something with moves management? And I need it to be easy and intuitive. Or if they need a quick
Mm-hmm.
report, right? And maybe the database person doesn't have time to run the report, but we can show you quick steps and you can do it. And
Mm-hmm.
then on the same token, for that database, I call them gurus. So our database guru, it's really important for me that they believe in the system and they can navigate it and they feel comfortable with it. I needed reports to be easy. But that user friendly was number one. And number two
Mm-hmm.
was support. I wanted humans. And maybe some of you are laughing right now,
Yeah.
but I needed a human contact. I did not want an email that went into the world and then hopefully someday it went in some ticket and somebody called us back because that was what we were dealing with. I needed to know I could get to people. And that was a deal breaker.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. That makes a lot of sense. So just kind of summarize then, like I was curious, what was your final criteria to making a decision? Would you say then that UI and then customer support, was there anything else?
Um, that I could do a, a
Or
lot
just kind of
within
that
one
were
platform, a lot
right?
within one
Mm-hmm.
platform, because there
I
was
see.
one company I demoed and I liked what they had, but then I started to learn that they were basically my shell. And then
Mm-hmm.
everything I needed to integrate, right? I want to do a peer-to-peer event. Well, that's a third party. I want to do this. Well,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to have to be a third party. I want to do some grant management. Well, we'll third party that. And in my experience, having a database then with a third party, it's not that it can't be done. It just adds another layer of
Mm-hmm.
sometimes complication. And I just knew. So the two databases I was looking at, one I had used previously in a former life. And so
Mm-hmm.
I knew what I'd be getting. Um, it was really coming down to what we felt was the most user friendly, the support I knew we could get, and the fact that I would not have to start doing third party contracts.
Adding. Yeah. Yeah, makes sense. Thank you. Devin, I also wanted to circle back for a second back to the leadership conversation and the
Yeah.
budget conversation, because I know
Yes.
in the transition, that's just, oh, that's like a
Oh, yeah,
big topic.
it is.
And I know based on your experience, like now you were able to present it in a way, right, to get that leadership buy-in. But for someone maybe who go in transition for the first time, or maybe who were told like, well, we want to go with the cheapest option, or so on, is do you have any advice how to approach those conversations, especially when
Yeah.
um the new cost may be much higher than what the organization is used to?
Yeah. So two things around that. If you don't mind, I'll tell a cute little story. First
Yeah,
time I
please.
transitioned to database was back in 2013. I got to an organization that had a donor database, but no one knew how to use it. And the
Mm,
support contract had run out. So there was this really big manual, didn't make a whole lot of sense. And one person knew how to run three reports. And I thought, oh boy. And we were going into a program that we had spent funds on, a program for fundraising
Mm-hmm.
that was going to teach us about individual giving. It's called Benevon.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a recommendation for a platform. And I can remember going and talking with the CEO. I think we might need to consider, a database transition. I mean, I just got
Mm-hmm.
here, so I need a little time, but I'm thinking this is what we're going to need to do. Oh, that is definitely not in the budget. I said, but I can't access the one I've got except for the three reports. Well, we'll have to get you some support for that. And to be
Mm-hmm.
fair, right, that CEO hadn't ever had to work in the database either, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just knew what he had heard from
Right.
colleagues. Like he got the reports he needed. And so that took time. That took about 6 months
Mm-hmm.
of having conversations. I'd strategically bring it up if something wasn't
Mm-hmm.
working or the report didn't look right. I was like, well, if we potentially go with a different solution, we might be able to do X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
And I would ask questions. What is it you want from the database? What do you want me to give you in a meeting? What do you want me to present
Mm-hmm.
to the
That's
board?
good.
Right. And then
Mm-hmm.
I would say, well, the database can do X, Y, and Z. It cannot do these other three
Mm-hmm.
things. So we do need to look at a solution. Ultimately, we ended up transitioning. And it was I mean, they'd had a
Mm-hmm.
database for years and they weren't paying for support anymore. So that was a significant
Yeah.
increase in price. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I happen to know who the development director is there now. And I mean, it's paid off in dividends. I mean, it's huge what they're able to do now. It paid for itself within a couple of
Yeah.
years. It was done. Um, and then here, those conversations, just really advocating for tools that would make it easier to raise funds,
Mm-hmm.
right? To focus
Yeah.
on the donor as opposed to constantly fighting with the data, right? You want a
Mm-hmm.
place where you can have good data in, good data out. You don't want it to take hours of your time, right? That's time and money too. So I would talk about if we do X, this is what's going to happen, right? If we decide to go with the other database and now I have to third party contract, here's what I know of that third party. Here are the pros. Here's what works really well. Here are the challenges. And this is going to take significant amount
Mm-hmm.
of time to do. And ultimately, it was that real discussion about it's going to cost no matter how we do this. So let's do it the smartest way. I believe I had to promise that we would see results. Um, and I felt confident to say,
Of
yes,
course.
we will. I know it enough
Mm-hmm.
to know that this will make things easier.
Right. Yeah, and I do want to point out, even with your recent transition, like you did have a specific initiative in place, right? Like we're gonna have this event or we're gonna have this and this. So it's not just
Yep.
like we're making a transition. There is a
Right.
strategy around it that allows you to make a certain projection and,
Yep.
promises to the
Yep.
team. I wanted to kind of change the gears a little bit and talk a little bit about data migration. So once you're,
Yes.
decided to make a switch, okay, which was the platform, this is where I feel like a lot of organizations have so many fears around the data
And I
migration, the
understand that.
touching the
Hmm.
data. They're like, oh. So how was your data migration? I guess, do you have any advice to organizations who are going through transition, how to approach it?
Sure. So we made the decision in December of 24 to move to Giveffect. So in January, we started conversations about the migration process, had a specialist, which was really important, and great to kind of coach through how we were going to do this, and was accessible, right? Because I get it. It is scary. You're moving a whole lot of records
Mm-hmm.
and you hope it shows up the way it's supposed to on the other side. And I've also been in organizations where they lost records, right? And we don't want that to happen. So you're really protective and careful. So when we started, my database coordinator was just really nervous about this data
Mm-hmm.
migration. So I took on the role of like going through the data,
Yeah.
which was really beneficial for me because, right, I'm newbie on the block. I got to know those
Hmm.
donors very well during migration as I'm looking at each
Hmm.
record and how are they connected? Who's married to who? Are those their kids? And you also start to see, right, when you have many hands in a database over time, you start to see um, changes occur. Like at one point, we were
Hmm.
set putting all of the addresses like this. Then we got a little lax and a little, oh, we'll just throw them in like this. And so you started to see where cleanup was going to need to happen, right? So we made the
Yeah.
decision to do some cleanup ahead of time, but I knew fully
Okay.
well that when it was fully migrated over, there would be a big cleanup process. But I knew that
Hmm.
going in, right? And we made that strategic
Okay.
decision that, okay, so we did what we could ahead of time, and worked really closely with Corey, who was our migration specialist,
Mm.
and there were great tutorials, but you're doing it the first time. I had a lot of questions. Like I would start to pull something and go, that is so not what I wanted. I don't know how to pull this. And so I would say, hello, Corey. I don't know how to do this. I need help.
Hmm.
And it's also this is probably why I like this so much. It's a bit of a puzzle. The migration process revealed things that were really great in the database and things that were somewhat problematic.
Hmm.
And one of the things we discovered problematic wise was around our pledging process, how it had been done
Hmm.
in the past, right? Because how it needed to look in the new space wasn't captured necessarily the way would be like a best
I
practice.
see.
So that was really
Hmm.
helpful to know that because
Yeah.
otherwise we would have just been blissfully unaware that we needed to do this fix.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for sharing that. And this is also interesting because I can see your point now that, I mean, it's a lot of work. Let's not downplay it.
Yeah,
Like data
no,
migration is a lot of work. But
it
I
probably
think
took
the
me
benefit that you
45
mentioned,
hours to get
yeah,
everything ready to
yeah,
go,
yeah,
honestly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But then the benefit that you mentioned, I've never actually thought about it, is getting to know your donors and getting to know those people in the
Yeah.
system. Like,
You know them
yeah,
well.
that's that's a
Yeah.
that's a
It
great
was really
benefit.
helpful.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow. Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that. And then on the onboarding side, also like learning the system. That's
Mhm.
also curious. How was that process? Again, learning the whole new systems
System.
or helping your team to learn the system. If you have any advice
Right.
for attendees.
Yeah, so we had a full onboarding system it was set up, maybe 6 calls, right, with the same person,
Mm.
our account manager, Nicole, who's fabulous. Shout out to Nicole, she's amazing. Um, and really was patient with us, right, as we're navigating this new system. And each
Mm.
time we met was a different group of modules we were going to go through. We could pause and say, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. How do we do it like this? And it was just very smooth. And I very much
Mm.
appreciated that because remember, I have a colleague who's very nervous about the transition. So to be able to have a very smooth process that's well
Mhm.
documented, there were a lot of videos. So we'd watch videos before we met with Nicole so that, we had something going on in our mind. And then she'd send a recap and then we could send questions saying, okay, I understand this, but when we get back together,
Mm.
I need to talk about X, Y, and Z. Um, and it was very, very smooth. I mean, we started the transition, signed everything, started first meetings in January. March 18th, I made my first gift in
Mm.
Giveffect to test it out.
Mm.
And then we moved, and then
Amazing.
we were done.
Wonderful. Kali actually in the Q&A section had a question like around this. How do you encourage the staff to get acquainted with the new system and begin regular usage of the new system? So
Sure.
maybe transition or even when you have a new team members, right, joining.
Yeah. So a couple of things. The first is when we were doing demos, we would ask, can we like,
Mm.
can we demo this for a bit? Is there a test version we can play in? That was really helpful. So it was go
Mm.
play in it. Like put in records, try to do this, pull a report, see what it does. I find that to
Mm,
be really helpful. It's very hands-on. And then with the onboarding piece was very much, we made a clean break, right? We picked a day,
mm,
mutually agreed upon date. Once they say we're clear, we're going, right? And the thing
mm,
is, we still had the other database for a little bit, which was helpful because there was overlap. If we saw something that maybe didn't look just right, we could go back in the other system and say, is that
mhm,
how that's supposed to be? And make that change. We've grown our team. In fact, that development coordinator chose to go on a new adventure after 10 years.
mm.
And so we brought on a new development coordinator and then we're able to bring on an annual giving manager. They'd never worked in the
Ah,
system. And what was so great was
mhm,
no problem. They'll go through the full onboarding as well.
mm,
Right. And they may ask different questions. They're seeing it from a different point
mm.
of view. So in a way, for me, it was like, well, this is great. Now you two are getting trained, and then you'll come back and tell me things that maybe I didn't think about that we should be looking at. That was great.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. And for everyone who is live today, so please feel free to use Q&A section. We are going to be going changing things up and going through Q&A just in a second. So please feel free to submit your questions. We'd love to answer as many as we can. And a couple last questions from me then. So as you settled into the new system, what was the early indicators that give you reassurance that, the transition is paying off?
So I would say probably one of the first was when I went to go run a report, right? I had to be shown a couple of times, like, how am I going to do this?
Mhm.
This is going to sound really simple, but it gave me the data I was looking for. Um, And I think unless you're right, if you're in this world, you know like how frustrating it is when you try to go get something out of a
Mhm.
database and it's not giving you what you want. That was really helpful to be able to, in 2025, now that the foundation members doing all of the fundraising, so now I need to start doing dashboards for the boards. There had been no real dashboards
Mhm.
before, and I needed to look
Mhm.
at number of donors, number of donations, average gift, how many new donors. And I just didn't trust the information out of the other system. And this was so easy at a glance to put
Mhm.
together for the board and to make it easy for them to kind of see where we're going and the progress we're making. And I'd say the other one was when we did the 5K, to have a system that I could set up pretty quickly once we figure out how to
Mhm.
make a campaign and went through that tutorial with Nicole. There were moments where I was like, oh, it's not working. And I'd just send a quick note, say, hey, this is happening. Can you show
Mhm.
me? And we'd hop on. She'd show me what was going on.
Mhm.
We had, I think, over 100 people at our first event for this 5K. And we brought
Wow.
in a lot new donors. And it's exposing people to the mission is going
Mhm.
to be really important for us. And
Yeah.
that was fantastic.
Wow. Well, congratulations on the event and
Thank
all
you. Thank
the
you.
other things you're going to be doing. And the last question, before we change the gears, is for nonprofit leaders who, know the change is needed, but they feel uncertain about the timing on the next step. What advice would you offer based on all of your experience with
Yeah.
transitions?
You know, do your research. Um,
Mhm.
be intentional about what it is you want. Spend the time to truly figure out what it is you want. It makes it a lot easier when you go then start looking and you're looking at demos.
Mhm.
I can tell pretty much now within the first 15 minutes if I think this is going to be a system
Yeah.
I can use or if it's maybe just not for me. It doesn't
Mhm.
mean it's not for somebody else, but it's not going to work with what I need or what the team needs. Um, and be an advocate, right? Systems are meant to be put in place to help and not make
Mhm.
things harder. They're supposed to make things easier so you can
Right.
focus on the mission and what you're supposed to be doing
Mhm.
and trust your gut. Trust your gut when you're doing the transition and ask, call people, find people who've used the database. That's what we did.
Mhm.
I knew somebody who had moved with Giveffect, and I sat down with her, my development coordinator, and I both, and we asked a bazillion questions. And I said, good,
Hmm.
bad, ugly.
Wow. Yeah.
She gave it to me
Hmm.
all, right?
Yeah.
Because I needed to know what we were getting ourselves into. And that's fair. I mean, that's any kind of thing, right? A recommendation. Why should we go here? That was really helpful.
Absolutely. Wow, fantastic. Well, Dan, thank you so much. Thank you so much
Absolutely.
for all your knowledge, everything that you shared. And now we have about 5, 7 minutes. So if you have questions for Devon, please feel free to put them in the chat or Q&A box. It's in the bottom of your screen. But while we're waiting for some questions to come in, I also had a couple of questions from your registration
Okay.
form. And one question was, how did you find the technology switch? I don't know if you can share more,
How did I
but
find doing the switch? Like my
oh,
overall
fund,
impression?
like
Oh,
fund,
fund it.
no, like
Ah, yeah. How'd I fund
funded.
it? Well, so when I made the pitch to do this, and I'm total transparency with you, it was about double what I had been paying.
Mhm.
Um, I, looked at like our funding base and we happened to have a reserve. So I knew that if I was going to take a little bit from the reserve to do this, I had to make a really good pitch to do so. But I also
Mm,
I adjusted our fundraising goals. I was like, well, and the CEO said, if you're
mm,
going to do this, you have to like show me that it is worth the
right.
investment. And I was confident enough to say, I have no problem doing that.
Mm, yeah. Thank you. Do you have what advice do you have for a very small organization, maybe 5 people or less, with the total budget of 300K?
Okay. I feel you. We are 3.3 FTEs in the Roosevelt Foundation. So if you're just starting out and you're looking at a database, it is going back to where are you at in your
Mm,
journey as an organization, right? What do you need right now? I mean, I know it can be intimidating sometimes and scary to transition a database, but maybe what you need right now is this state is database A, right? This is going to get you, it's going to
mhm,
launch you, it's going to take you where you need to go. Maybe you're not in a position yet to go to database B, but you could be in maybe 5 years, and then you could make that transition.
right.
Or if you can get really strong leadership support and board support, right? It's all about the pitch and knowing what the return on investment is going to be, and get their
Mm,
buy-in, and then you'll just soar and you can go right to B.
yeah. Yeah. Thank you. And
Mhm.
then the one more question here is, how do you determine how long to run both systems? So I think you mentioned you had like two system overlapping. So again, based on your experience, did you go cold turkey? How long did you use both systems?
Okay. So we did not go cold turkey. It was helpful to
I would
have a
not
system.
recommend that.
I would not recommend it. Um, we were in a unique situation where the contract that had been set prior to me arriving, so back in 23, they'd gotten into a contract. So I knew the database, we're going to have it for more months than I needed it.
Mm,
So that was also part of my pitch and why this was going to be okay. I'd say if you have it for a couple months, you're good. If you can make sure you have the manpower to dedicate the time to start doing your cleanup in the new database. If
mm,
something look off, go and check the old database. But within a couple of months, you should be in a decent position to let that one sail away and start using this one.
mm. Yeah, I would add to that. It depends also, like I would check with the new platform that you're changing to, like
Yeah,
how long realistically the onboarding and data migration is, and
yeah,
use it as a frame of reference, right, when making the
exactly.
decision.
Correct. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, then we are almost on time. I think we're good with the question. We covered so much information today. I really wanted to say thank you to you for generously offering your time and knowledge. I also wanted to thank everyone who joined us today live, and also there's going to be a lot of people who didn't join but will be getting a recording. So before we jump in, couple of things. How can people get in touch with you? We're good to share your email. Is that a good
Yes, please. Yeah,
way?
absolutely. Share email, reach out. I'm happy to touch base with you once we email. If you want to talk on the phone, you want to set up a Zoom or a Teams call. Um, I just know how important it is to have the right tools in
Mm.
place, based on my experience of sometimes not having them, and then difference it makes when you do. I'm happy to talk through the good, the bad, the ugly.
Thank you so much. And my colleague Tira put your contact information in the chat. So if anyone would like to get in touch with Devon, please copy the email address, or there's a link to LinkedIn profile as well. And then if you are interested in learning how your team can lead successful tech transition, you can also book a call with our team at Giveffect as well. And last thing I'm going to say, we do this speed learning session every month. So next month we will be back here live at the end of the month. It's February 25, and we are going to have a session why nonprofit tech decisions stall and how leaders break through. So again, I think Tara is putting the link right now in the chat. Feel free to, copy and sign up right away, or we're also going to be sharing those links in the follow-up email. So you will receive them anyways. But thank you so much again to everyone. Thank you, Devon. It was such a
Thank you.
wonderful session, and we look forward to next month's session. Have a great
All
day,
right.
everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.